Hey everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Jitsi Community Call. Let's start with the team. It's been a week off for a big part of the team last week, so there isn't that much. But would anyone like to share anything? Anyone here? If not, we can then move to the other part of the call. Jay, Yana, Damien, Brian, Jonathan, anything you'd like to share?
There was an update from Sue. He couldn't join, so he left me a message. He left us a message. The version 20.5 is out, bringing screen sharing to Android. Betas are currently running with WebRTC 87 and audio volume improvements on Android, and update to Debian Booster for the Docker containers is now in PR.
Sounds great. Thank you. So, yeah, Damien. Anyone else?
I'm not sure whether I missed it, but I would like to add a couple of things about things we changed in Jicofo recently.
Go for it.
Most notably, we removed the reservation system. That code, as far as we know, was unused. Damien can correct me, but there's an implementation that uses proto modules to accomplish the same thing, and other systems implemented outside Jicofo. So this code is now removed.
Yay.
And we are working on removing the component support for Jicofo. This shouldn't affect anyone. It's just a change from Jicofo registering as a component to doing everything on the user connection. And lastly, we removed the same thing in Jigassi a couple of weeks ago. So Jigassi can no longer connect as a component, and it needs to connect as a user and use the brewery room. That's all.
Thank you, Boris. Last call for anyone who would like to add anything. Okay. Opening the microphone to the floor. Any questions or comments from the community?
I have a few questions. Hi.
Hey.
First, I wanted to say on the jitsi.org website, it says weekly calls, but then it says bi-weekly calls. So which one is it?
It's bi-weekly. I'm sorry. This is on me. I'll try to fix that today.
No problem. Just wanted to mention. Okay, so bi-weekly. Second is, I noticed this weekend that I made an issue already that I muted myself and other people could still hear me. So I thought this is pretty serious.
Where was that? Mobile or desktop?
Desktop. It was a few hours in, and after I refreshed, it didn't happen. Also, the other people could see that I muted myself. So they could see me muted and they can still hear me.
Okay. That is indeed bad. I think we were chasing a similar issue that I believe we patched recently, so that could be another problem. So yeah, thanks for reporting. You don't recall whether any specifics. So it was just a mute like anyone else. Was it a key-based mute, or actually
Yes.
Probably doesn't matter. It was a key-based mute. Okay.
It was a key-based mute, but I think I tried both afterwards. I don't remember exactly. I couldn't reproduce it. I refreshed, and then I couldn't reproduce it. I should have remembered more before refreshing.
Do you remember when you did this? Do you remember whether locally you were seeing your audio levels while you were being muted?
My audio levels? Oh.
Yeah, on your local preview. It's not that important, but it's just trying to.
And what was your state of the buttons when you passed through the pre-join screen. Do you remember?
What do you mean?
But I think he means that happened a few hours in the call. Actually, Hagai, is it possible that it was happening the entire call, but you only noticed a few hours in?
Oh, definitely. That's definitely possible. I only noticed a few hours in, so.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't even notice. Someone else noticed, because I would never, no one ever thinks of that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And on the pre-join screen, did you mute there, or was it unmute on the pre-join screen?
I wouldn't remember that. That was a few
Okay.
hours in.
Yep.
But I'll report back if it happens
Yeah, thank
again.
you. This is obviously serious, so thanks for reporting.
We've
I
seen
opened an
something
issue.
similar. And we suspected it was pre-join related.
Okay, good to know.
Third thing is, I just noticed today when I was sharing my screen, the quality was really bad. Then I refreshed, and the quality was amazing. Then
Yeah, that
bad
is
again.
another one that we're chasing. We're aware of that one.
Okay.
We're not exactly sure why it happens and when. It's definitely a big problem. But at least that one we're chasing right now.
Okay, it was interesting that I could refresh and see the screen well for a second, so I was pretty sure it's not.
Yeah, no, it's
Yep.
it like from what we've seen, like there've been various issues there. It's we were recently doing some tweaking on limiting upstream resolution. Maybe that was what would impacted it. We were also doing some tweaking on the SDP. We thought that might have also played a role. Was that a one-to-one call, by the way, or a multi-party
Yes.
one? It was
One-to-one.
Right.
So maybe I can chime in about this one I've been experiencing myself. And we're trying to narrowing it down to, I think it's something like a first hint we got is the bandwidth estimations was starting very, very high and just going very slowly low and never coming back. So it was not fluctuating anymore. So we did some experiments where with different browsers, and every time the congestion control algorithm or I don't know what, so the upload bandwidth estimations was always going down and never coming back up.
And have you noticed a trend between one-to-one and multi-party calls?
No, one-to-one, yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. But in our case, we disabled the peer-to-peer to remove variables. So everything is going through the bridge to investigate that issue. So yeah, I'm not too sure about one-to-one, but I did some experiments, and like, let's say in Safari wasn't doing it, like my bandwidth was always estimated properly. Firefox older versions were fine, but latest was having the same problem as in Chrome. So it seems to come and go, and my only let's say my only the only point I found is basically it seems to always be tied with the bandwidth estimation.
Are you running your own deployment, or is this on me, Jitsi?
No, we're running our own.
Okay, if you're able to easily test with the latest bridge, you might want to do that. We've been chasing this one, and there was a fix for an issue in the bridge, which would send a constraint of max height 0 when you switch from video to screen sharing. And there was a suspicion that this might somehow end up causing the client to send low resolution. And I think that's consistent with what you described. Like the bandwidth estimation would initially grow, but then since you don't have enough to send, it will gradually fall down. So I suggest you try that. If you want to confirm, you can open the JavaScript console and look for bridge channel. There you see sender video constraints, and I'll type that in the chat in a second.
Okay,
you
that's
can see the restriction to the resolution that your client sends.
So the bridge you're talking about, is it the latest table, or
the latest master? I will link to the commit.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question which may be related. We run Jitsi Meet with 4 video bridges, and we see very often inactive users. So what are the conditions that a user is being set inactive, that the video is being set inactive? This is also discussed on issue 7227.
When you say inactive, do you mean that you actually see the line A equals inactive in SDP? Or are you saying that you just don't see their video?
I don't see the video, and I get a little icon saying it's inactive on the top left. So it's blanking.
I got the same thing. That was going to be my next question, actually.
Yeah, several people should have it, and we would like to know what are the conditions to put it inactive.
So it becomes inactive when, and someone on the team, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it becomes inactive if packets for that participant stop arriving without having received an indication from the bridge that this participant has been intentionally turned off to save bandwidth. Right, so your video would go off in both cases, but in one case you would see a little ninja icon that says video for this participant has been turned off, and in the other case it would just become inactive. That means no packets are arriving. Now, why no packets are arriving? It could be because they stopped going out of the sender for some reason, or it could be because for some reason the bridge isn't sending them anymore. Or there's a lot of loss and there's not enough for the decoder to handle, so the video tag ends up stopping. Does anyone from the team want to correct me?
I just want to add, I noticed something very interesting. When you press on these people that are inactive, then suddenly you can see the streams. So you can see the video, just not in the, what's it called, the toggle view. And then sometimes when you refresh also, you can suddenly see everyone. So it's been really weird with this inactive icon.
Right, so that places it more likely on the side of the between the bridge and the receiver. If the fact that you can switch to other layers, if that's there and if that's true, then that means that video is being sent, and for some reason the bridge isn't forwarding it. Would anyone from the team want to comment here?
That could be last N, maybe.
I think last N would show up the ninja icon. Or actually, no, sorry, it wouldn't necessarily show the ninja icon, but at least it would show the avatar. It wouldn't have the inactive icon, I believe. I think we show the inactive icon when, if I'm not mistaken, when the video tag just stops rendering without us having any other indication.
What is the ninja icon? What does it look like?
It's a little circle that looks like a ninja, and that would happen if adaptivity on the bridge determines that there's not enough bandwidth.
I've been seeing this on and off for like half a year at least, and sometimes it was better when I was on incognito mode. I remember a time where we managed to figure that out. Don't know why, but yeah.
Same here. We have it since summer, and the users get inactive for a few seconds, up to a minute, and then the video is here again. And we cannot pull it. It's independent of the traffic or the bandwidth load on the bridge. So we couldn't nail that down to any conditions yet. And we would like to help to debug it, but we don't know where to look at.
So, I mean, something that could happen, really, actually, what should happen is that we should probably look some more into that as well. It just wasn't, it's not currently one of the top ones compared to, for example, you know, the desktop sheetiness, because usually doesn't happen for on-stage participants, for example. But if you have some time on your hands, what you could do is to check out the SSRC for that person, which you can now do in your, the GSM stats submenu. And, I don't know if you can do that for other people, but if not, you can ask them to tell you. And then you can have a look with Wireshark on whether you're actually getting packets with that SSRC. So that would help, position the problem as either, a transport issue or some sort of a signaling problem.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you.
I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead.
I've had a self-hosted one for about 1.5 years now. Works perfectly on PCs, Androids, and up to like 30, 40 connections. Never have been able to get it to work on Apple after they updated their operating system with certain codecs and so on. So, and that's working perfectly. It still works. Everything's fine. Now we're trying to, we built a couple self-deployed ones, but we're not having really any luck with getting it to work with Apple. However,
when you say Apple, do you mean Mac OS or iOS?
I'm going to say right now what I mean, and that's Chrome on an Apple phone or on an Apple iPad. What we do.
So this has never worked actually. Chrome
on
iOS doesn't work.
We have it to a point working. That's why I wanted to say.
No, what does work on iOS is if you use it within Safari, but web views on other browsers than Safari on iOS do not support WebRTC.
Okay, we have had it function with it receiving remote video, but not displaying its own video. In other words, with Chrome on an iPad or on an iPhone, we're getting the remote video from the PC Chrome, but we're not able to see our local video, number one. And number two is the remote, the other side, the PC side, isn't seeing our video, but we are receiving the remote video. So we could just continue with that. But that's one thing that we ourselves have experienced. Maybe there's some simple solutions to that. Now, my main question, however, is this one. Right now, I'm using an iPad, and I have, 37 or something people, and everything's working fine on your meet.jit.c. Now, when we make our own self-hosted one, I've noticed that there's really not any guidelines on how to have a similar functioning server, such as the one that you have right now, meet.jit.c. What I'm trying to say is that functions perfectly in everything with Safari and with multi-point. So what we're trying to figure out is how we can have a similar one, because we don't really we can't really offer to our clients, governments, big customers, such like that they have to rely on an app and give Google and Apple untold amounts of information. So we have to stick with the web version somehow. Now, my main question is this. I noticed that in your config on meet.jit.c that you have WebSockets enabled and the turn, and then also P2P. So in order for this to work similarly to the way that this deployment is working, do we have to have WebSockets, turn server, and how do we operate with the P2P part of it? So that's basically what we're trying to figure out now.
So the WebSockets part is there's two parts actually. There's the WebSocket channel between Meet, Jitsi, and the server infrastructure, which we do recommend WebSockets for efficiency reasons. That's why we use it. I don't know where we are with Bosch support at this point. I don't know if that's still supposed to be working or not. But the other place where it's important to have WebSockets is the data channels on the bridge. So we definitely recommend that because WebSockets behave a lot better than the USR SCTP stack that provides data channel support in the bridge. So yes, we recommend WebSockets on both accounts. With regard to P2P, it's really up to you. It only impacts one-to-one conversations. And what it means is that if there are only two people in a call, we're going to try and connect them directly. A direct connection might imply falling back to a turn server if a truly direct connection is not possible. But if a turn server is not present, we fall back to connecting people through the bridge. So again, turn servers are recommended, but they shouldn't be the difference between working and non-working calls. Just as P2P. It's all a matter of optimization. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually it does. The main focus here is that, to understand you, is that the turn server isn't necessary. Okay.
Well, actually, there are certain use cases where it is necessary.
For instance, in the meet.jit.c, because I did notice turn server specs inside of there with the WebSockets and with it set
so
on
the
WebSockets.
primary case where a turn server is being used is, again, one-to-one conversations that we weren't able to connect directly. There is another use case where a turn server can end up being used, and that is if a UDP connection between the client and the bridge is not possible, and we need TCP. We used to have TCP support in the bridge directly, but I think we removed it, right, Boris? It's no longer there, or if it is, we recommend against using it.
It's still there. It's just not enabled on our deployments or by default.
Right. So for these cases, like if you don't have TCP enabled, which you wouldn't by default, as Boris just mentioned, then you would need a turn server so that in case UDP is not possible, people can fall back to TCP. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's even a case if you were in an environment where only SSL is possible, then that can only work with a turn server. But we're talking about rather marginal situations.
So how is the meet.jit.c configured with WebSockets, with turn server, and with P2P? See,
that is correct.
We haven't really found any guidelines to get the similar functionality as what we're looking at right now. And
no, the fact that you looked at config.js was a good thing to do. That's essentially a publicly available file. That's it. These are the settings that we use. Again, I was trying to offer some guidance into which of those could impact connectivity and which of them are only a matter of optimization. But if you're truly interested in replicating exactly the configuration on Jitsi, then just make sure you have the same settings in config.js.
Now, we did notice some issues with the turn server. Do we need to have? Can we have the turn server with a different record on our domain that we're deploying it on, or do we have to have a completely separate location for the turn server?
We make no assumptions on the domain of the turn server. It can be whatever you want it to be.
Okay, so it looks like we just have to work out the kinks with the WebSockets, the turn server, and the P2P. Too bad there's not really some guidelines to make it a little easier, because there's a lot of searching through posts and figuring things out. And we do understand that it's not possible to look at every configuration with everybody that has a problem. So I'd like to thank you already.
Thank you for your kind words. Are there any other questions?
Quick one, just in regards to Stephen's question. If you're having issues, I used to work in an ISP or AT&T, you might want to let your clients know that they need to tell their ISP to unblock the ports. Because we had issues with people who were trying to use voice video conferencing applications. And our threat protection systems were picking that up as a problem and blocking it. So that might be something Stephen wants to check to make sure that either on his side, the ISPs or his client's ISPs are not blocking that traffic, especially using the UDP.
I don't think that's really the case, because we're getting everything to function with Android or PC. So if it was a ISP issue, I don't think it would be working on a different platform like the just PC. So in other words, it seems to me that it is somehow in the operating system.
Okay.
Other questions?
I've been having an issue that is caused by the rotation of a phone. So when the phone is in landscape mode, the video is being transmitted fine. But when it's rotated into portrait mode, the video gets all.
Is that Android?
Yeah, it's Android. Yes.
Okay, we're going to try.
I don't know if you can see the issue on your screens right now, but
I'm not looking at my screen.
Is this is this the app or the web?
It's the web. If I use the app, then I don't seem to have the problem.
Yeah.
All right. So the app. Sorry, the web. Why don't you go first, Damien, and then I'll make my comment after that.
No, I remember Saul commenting on that he knows about the issue, and it's like in the browser itself. It's not on our side, but yeah, maybe I can be wrong.
So I would just generally advise everyone here, as much as possible, and I know circumstances do not always allow for that, but Jitsi support on mobile browsers is, for all practical intents and purposes, a second-rate citizen at this point. We do focus most of our efforts on the apps, and just because it's much easier to maintain one platform than all the options out there. So while I'm grateful that people are describing their issues, I just want to make sure that everyone understands that it is using browsers on mobile is not something we recommend.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make it available to some volunteers in my program, and I can't always ask them to install apps. They're not all allowed to.
And the other issue is that Apple now, with their $399 iPhone, they're like saturating the market. So we can't just ignore that, I think.
Well, we're not asking you to ignore phones. We're just saying that if you're using phones where possible, the app is a much better choice.
Thank you.
Especially now that there's screen sharing from the app. That's cool. Thanks.
Oh, sure. And iOS should arrive at some point as well. It's a little bit more intricate there, but hopefully we'll get there.
That's amazing. Thanks.
Thanks for kind words. Are there any other questions?
I have two small things. One is the Control-C. I thought it would go away, but you seem to really like it, to close the comments. I mean, it's, yeah, you want to copy something and it closes the comments. Is anyone planning on ever changing that?
I actually, yeah, we need to look at that. I've never seen that actually. I don't believe it's a Control-C shortcut normally. I believe it's just a C. And it should be a C that happens when the focus is not in the text field. So, I mean, why? There's actually nothing helpful I can say other than I understand it is a problem. I agree it is a problem, and we have to get around to it, or someone else could.
The problem is, as soon as you touch something to copy it, then the focus is not in the box anymore, and then you're trying to copy.
No, I completely
something,
understand it.
closing.
I completely understand. I agree, it's a problem, and then we just need to see who gets the time to fix it.
I mean, the alternative is, of course, to just as soon as you select something, it copies it automatically. If you really want to go.
No, I don't believe that. I think there's probably it's just a matter of making again, I believe the actual shortcut is C, so Control C should be recognized as a different key combination, and it shouldn't act when that happens. And apparently, when we're checking for the event there, we're not looking at the right event. We're not looking at key modifiers, and that's probably what needs to happen. We just need to make sure that we check for, well, control, essentially, or any other key modifiers.
Cool.
Or maybe it's a matter of using a different event or something. Yes, sorry.
The second thing is just the voice on the messages on the chat. Is there any way to turn that off?
You can open the chat.
Yeah, I know. I noticed.
No,
But
there
that's
isn't.
it.
There
Okay.
isn't.
Okay. Change the noise. Change the notification.
Well, you can do that with your own deployment. I mean, I can, the stream of work that would lead to something where we let you configure. I would just say that, letting you configure sounds is not something that's happening in the foreseeable future.
Okay.
Now, I also understand that you simply dislike the sound. I'm not particularly excited about the mission of finding a sound that everyone will like.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid that this one isn't looking good. So you might keep the chat open, I guess.
On the meet.jit.c, but on private ones you can.
Or you can just
change
replace it with an empty sound or with another one. Obviously, of course, that you can do.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
I have a question. We have a server, a self-hosted server, where we've done some significant customization of the config.js for quality purposes. And we've noticed that we also have an external video bridge. And when we disable the local video bridge and force it to use the external video bridge, the changes that we've made in the config.js don't seem to follow over to the external video bridge. Does that make sense?
No, I don't really understand. What does an external video bridge mean?
A video. So we have a self-hosted server where the video bridge is running on the same host, and then we've set up another video bridge as a failover.
But when you say another video bridge, is it an entire Jitsi Meet installation, or is it just one video bridge?
It's just
without a Gofo.
Right. It's another host running only a video bridge.
And how do you? So it's essentially how do you switch between the two? Do you essentially restart Gofo, or how do you make the switch?
Kill the video bridge on the Jitsi Meet server, stop it, and that forces it to use the other video bridge on its own host, the external one.
I'm actually so team. Is that even possible? Why would one of the bridges be systematically used if both of them are registered?
Well, we would kill the local one, the one running on the Jitsi Meet server, in order to test that the external one is actually used.
Right, but if you haven't killed it, what you should be seeing is that conferences are being spread over the two bridges. Right.
Okay.
We don't. Right. I don't believe we have a mechanism that lets you, have such an approach where everything goes to one bridge unless it's down, and then everything goes to the other. I don't believe we support such a configuration.
Yeah, there might be a weird case where if the stats from the bridge do not arrive at Gofo, so it never learns about the load. It's always going to have So it's going to order them the same and only use one, but that's not as designed.
Right, but why would that happen? How would the bridge be there, and it would be selectable, but its stats would not be arriving?
I think there are properties to disable the stats, and it will stop pushing them, right?
Yeah, it can be configured to not send stats.
Well, is that something that you guys have done intentionally?
We've done it intentionally in order to test the functionality of the external.
No. Have you intentionally configured the external bridge to not send stats?
No, we have not.
So are you sure actually that your conferences are exclusively going to the internal bridge, unless you kill it? Could it be that they're actually going to both and you're just not noticing?
Yeah, we're not sure. We have not tested it to the point where we have loaded the internal video bridge to the point where it needs to use the second bridge. So it could be related to that. The fact that
what are the settings, by the way, that you believe are not being replicated to the second bridge?
Some tweaks to the resolution. That's another question we have.
Okay, no, I think what's happening is that there's an issue with the data channel configuration of your second bridge. So one of the ways that you would usually notice that is that when data channels are dead, clients have no way of telling the bridge what stream they're looking at. So they end up receiving all the streams in a poor resolution. And if that's what you're seeing, a poor resolution for your external bridge, then it's probably a data channel configuration issue. So meaning likely your data channels are not working.
Okay.
You might want to look at that.
Okay, cool. That sounds good. Thank you.
Hope this helps.
Yep. Appreciate it.
Any other questions?
See, Ryan wants to speak, I can see.
Yeah. Hey, so we've set up VP9 for peer-to-peer calling. And I've noticed if we screen share while you're in VP9, it's capping my screen share at 5 frames per second. And then if we're in if we're going through the video bridge and it drops to VP8, then it pays attention to my config file, and I have that set to 30 frames per second. So it jumps up. I was just curious if VP9 was limited or if there was a setting for that somewhere for the screen share.
No. What's likely happening is that that setting is just not being applied for peer-to-peer.
Okay.
We don't have logic that does that based on the codec. So I don't know why it wouldn't be happening for peer-to-peer. Maybe Jay, I don't know if Jay is here. Maybe she would have an idea. One place where I believe, I don't know if that's going to work, but you can try enabling video while you're screen sharing, because that kind of changes the sort of piping in WebRTC. You can see whether that fixes your issue. Now, no, it's not going to fix your issue, but you can see whether in that case, when you have video on as well, whether the frame rate is different. Other than that, it just sounds like a bug that that we're not applying these constraints on the peer-to-peer screen sharing.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have anything else?
I just remembered one more thing that I wanted to ask. When you embed Jitsi on in another website, for example, on the Matrix client element, then and you have a few people on the call, that the clients get the icons get really small. Is there any way to use all the space on the side and to just not have the icons really small? Like there's, I don't know, 6, 7 people talking and half of the space is unused and the icons are really small. You can do full screen, of course, but then you can't use the chat.
We do. No, currently there's no good way to do this. It's we do have some work planned for responsiveness, where we would, better adapt to use space, and I suspect some of what you're describing may get better with that. There's another thing that you could do now is try to make sure that maybe some buttons are disabled always, or so that there's more button space. But no, I can't really think of a way to get you to have bigger buttons in the current situation. I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question on the same line. Currently on this call, I'm looking at a screen with 5x5 thumbnails, and I think there are more people on the call than 5x5.
Scroll down.
Is there? Oh, really? Oh, okay. Thank you. I did not know that. Thank you.
Well, sure. Here, we solved one problem.
I have a question. This is Charles. So I was wondering if there's ever going to be a way to have, in a situation with a hosted server where you have authentication active, to have an admin create the room and give hosting rights to a user without having to be a part of the conversation.
So that is something that is arguably out of context for Jitsi. It is something that we have at 8x8, for example. It's something that we do in our, Jitsi as a service offering. It's something that we have in our private clients, and it's all implemented through additional prosody modules. So that would control the access to the room. But like, it's not Jitsi's job really to understand things such as permission management. We only care about, does this person have a token or not? Like, how they got that token is totally out of scope. So you should look at managing that through Lua modules for prosody, for example, and have them interact with your permission management infrastructure.
Okay, so currently what I've basically just done is, I guess what you're describing, setting up an account on Prosody and just giving them a temporary user that they use. So because it's for people dealing with abuse, so basically I give them the user to get in there, set up the room, and because of authorization, you can't even connect to any of the rooms without logging in first. So that kind of solves it. So anyway, it's just something I was just trying to figure out if it could be done without having to go through any extra steps. But thanks.
Yeah, there are ways, but they're more complicated, and they would be something around not using prosody user management at all, having access control based on tokens. You might want to check our Jitsi as a service at 8x8, which essentially lets you embed Jitsi, control it through the API, but then every participant will have to go through a page of yours, and that page and its backend can decide whether that participant should get a token or not. We're not going to let anyone in without a token. So, that, I don't know if that works for you or not, but it's a potential avenue.
Could somebody drop the link in the chat, if possible?
Right. Yes.
Thank you.
Could someone do it, or let me do it? There you go. All right. A last question, maybe? Well, it sounds like we're done then. All right, y'all. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and see you again in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.